We've got John Garvin, creative director of Ben Studio, and Jeff Ross, game director of Ben Studio, here to talk about Days Gone.
Hello.
First question, how long until we get a Days Gone trailer with Take Me Home Country Road? Because that song is everywhere now. Every movie, every game.
Those days are gone.
Oh, no.
I'm done.
Excellent, yeah.
That's it. We first met you guys, I think, 2 years ago when you announced at E3. So it's good to chat with you guys again. Now the game's a lot further along. We have a release date on my birthday. Thank you.
Nice.
Congrats.
Of course, we planned it.
I know what to get you now.
Yeah, please.
It's my daughter's birthday too, so take that into account.
It's a good day. Yeah. It's a good birthday. So, what's changed since we last talked? It seems like you've released a lot more information about the game. What are the new things that we're here to talk about?
Well, I think one of the big things is when we first debuted the game in 2016, we showed a horde and it was massive and it was chasing Deacon down. This year we actually have a fully playable demo running at a locked 30 frames per second on the regular PS4 as well as the PS4 Pro. So to us that was a huge deal, getting optimization in, getting the performance in, because it runs really, really smoothly now, and just overall getting the game done.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the standouts that people remember from your first reveal in 2016 was just seeing the sheer number of freakers that were on screen chasing players around, and wondering how that was gonna play out in the actual final version of the game.
It plays out the same way, and people are doing it right now, and it's hard, and they're dying, and they're having a blast doing it. So it's really cool to see.
That's great.
And thank you for not calling them zombies.
I remember freakers, not zombies. I remember you all were very clear about that. We know that there are side quests in the game. What's the breakdown? Like, how much do you have like side quests versus story content when you approach a game like this?
Ooh, it's tough to measure. We're not really measuring it like that, but there's almost equal measure, give or take.
Okay.
I mean, there's you got players who can golden path it and just kind of focus on that. The game's going to be a little bit harder because they're not necessarily progressing enough in the other systems, but it's doable. There's really so much content at this point that we can't even effectively measure it. We're trying to play through it, trying to balance things, but if you really want to explore it, this game's huge, and it's in truly systemic stuff, in golden path content, and then just side path content as well. It's too big for us to measure, like I said.
I think one of the things we want to emphasize is that there's a huge narrative. There is a golden path that has a lot of content, and that all of the content in the world is sort of related directly to that. So it's not like you have a bunch of side missions that are completely esoteric and that really have nothing to do with Deacon and Deacon's journey. Everything is interrelated in some way, tonally and just in terms of the narrative. So yeah, there are like this is a main path mission where you're taking on the horde and you have to defeat them. So that's one of the things we really want to make clear, is that it's not just like, hey, you got to run from the horde every time you see it. This is late game. And so one of the things you can do after you've leveled the player up by doing some of the side content, you earn points, you earn trust at the human encampments, and that allows you to upgrade your weapons and to upgrade your bike. And then
it all matters. As a matter of fact, if you don't upgrade your bike for this mission, you're going to find yourself high and dry without ammo to take on these 250 horde members.
Because you can buy saddlebags.
Yeah, so you buy, one of the later game upgrades is saddlebags for your bike, where you can store extra caches of ammo in there to go back and top off. Whereas the beginning of the game, you're really kind of struggling to look for ammo and scavenging from every place you can. And here you're enabled to stay out in the world for much longer, taking on much larger crowds.
Yeah, and I think in the past you've even mentioned that the inventory system is not super unrealistic. So I mean, you're saying that really is key, and is that your primary mode of inventory upgrade? Is upgrading the bike, or do you also get like upgrades to your?
We've got both. Deacon's got a personal inventory, but then he's got his bike inventory, and the bike is designed to be something where it's another character. It's just as important to succeeding in this world as anything else, and the player needs it, or he's going to die, and he's got to manage it. So. Staying close to it certainly helps power him up a little bit more and helps him escape deadly situations. But he becomes more capable by himself, but not nearly capable enough to take on everybody without his bike.
Now, you guys have talked at length about how the dynamic night and day cycle is going to have an effect on the freakers. And like in this scene right now, the sun is setting. So like if it played out just a little bit too long, if the sun went all the way down with all these freakers that are currently chasing him, get a little power boost like mid.
Yes,
they totally would.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's wild to have to manage that on top of everything else.
And it's not just freakers. I mean, during the core daylight hours, that's when humans come out to kind of where it's a little bit safer for them. And at night, there's the freakers, and it's not something where it's to your advantage to stay in all day, all night, and go out during the day, because they're both equally dangerous in vastly different ways.
Does the because you guys revealed in the trailer that when played at the PlayStation press conference that there's now animals like bears and like I think there was like a mountain lion or something.
Yeah.
Does they behave the same way? Are they infected the same way the freakers are?
We have some, yeah.
Some animals are. So the mountain lion that you saw in the trailer is not infected.
Okay.
So there's non-infected bears, there's non-infected mountain lions, but there are definitely new animals that we revealed, like the infected crows, which we call criers, which can be really challenging. You see them circling in the world, and then you'll know that will draw you to something, and they will dive bomb you if you don't destroy their nest. So they're just one of the many hazards in a dynamic world that's constantly coming for you.
And they're all separate factions. I mean, there is no team animals versus team humans. It's team infected bear versus team bear, and so on. So, and everybody's got their own survival instincts, and they're all mutually opposed to one another. So it's dangerous 24 hours a day in this world.
So, I mean, I know you said it's difficult to measure, but I mean, it seems like the scope of this game and the scope of the campaign's pretty wide open and pretty big.
Yeah, we know what the scope of the game is. We're just not talking about it yet
Okay, gotcha.
because we're still kind of pre-Golden Master, so we're really, really fine-tuning it. So Jeff and I have both beaten the game a few times, and I know how long I want the Golden Path to be, and we're still tuning that in. So we have lots of focus testing going on, lots of play tests going on, and we're letting players help us determine what that sweet spot is between the Golden Path and the extra content.
So Golden Path would be like your main,
what you need to do to beat the story. So that's like, this is a Golden Path mission. This is one of the early ones called You've Got a Death Wish, and it kind of, it's one of the reason we included it for this E3 is because it shows how we're integrating the open world dynamic nature of the world with the storytelling. So you have a cutscene that sets up Deacon and Boozer's relationship. Deacon's very, very sort of reckless here. He's like, hey, I'm gonna go in and get a bike part. You ride your bike through and pull off as many freakers as you can. And and then the consequences of that, if you see at the end of the mission, is that they're attacked by Rippers and Boozer's really, really badly injured. And that's and this happens in the first 45 minutes of the game. So that sets up one of the key storylines, which is, hey, your best friend, your only friend, your brother, because you're both ex-members of an outlaw bike club, has been injured. And in this world, being injured badly is a death sentence, right? So his struggle to keep his friend alive, his brother alive, is one of the things that sort of drives the narrative. But you can see how it's integrated with the open world. And that's kind of tonally, in terms of the flow of the experience, that's something we worked really hard on.
Yeah, and speaking of that flow for open world, I believe in the first hour of gameplay that you all showed in May, there were no loading screens at all. It seems like that plays into the flow and keeping the experience
the whole
going.
world is contiguous. You can go in and out of buildings throughout the whole world just seamlessly, and it's all. I mean, every building is explorable.
I mean, we do have loads that we're doing when we bring in content for cinematics or missions, but they're very, very short. Like if you were to go into one of those buildings right now, there would be no load to get into it. All the buildings in Days Gone are completely explorable. And we've just, we felt like that was important to the game, to have it be as seamless as possible, to be able to just kind of go wherever you want and explore.
So, I mean, is that one of the, would you say like exploration is one of the main themes of the game? Maybe also like camaraderie. You talked about the Deacon and his friend being members of a biker gang together.
Doing whatever it takes to survive is the theme here.
Survival is really the theme.
And you have to go into places that are dangerous and where there's still stuff that can help you survive. So it's integral to the whole action survival genre that we're trying to create.
But it's up to the player, right? So we have to allow, it's an open world game, so you got to allow for player agency. Some players like to explore and they'll just kind of like go off in the weeds and get away from the story, and we allow for that. I mean, you can spend hours taking out nesting zones, which will open up fast travel routes, or taking on ambush camps, which will make the world a little bit safer. Both those things will earn trust at whatever human encampment happens to be in this region. So the player is free to do whatever he wants, and if she wants to, she can come right back to the story and take on another story mission and progress and see what happens next to Deacon.
Is there, like, when you guys, because there's a second character, right, besides Deacon, that you'll play as through the main story?
No, there's only Deacon St. John.
Deacon?
That's
Okay.
all you'd play.
All you'd play as. So there was never any thought put into whether or not you guys would want to support some sort of co-op or multiplayer experience?
No,
through
not
this
at
game?
all. We were determined from the very beginning, because Ben Studio, we've always done narrative single-player games. Some of our earlier games did have multiplayer modes, but we've always been focused on telling a compelling single-player narrative. And that's kind of where our heart is. That's what we really enjoy, is crafting a character that you haven't played before really in a game like this, and a world that you've never really explored like this. So being in the high desert, kind of set in Central Oregon, and having all of that be, a thing that is new to players. That's what we really wanted.
I want to say thank you for that, because I'm a big single-player narrative game player, and I really appreciate that. And I know there's been a lot of talk.
So you guys are old.
Yeah, we're old. That's what it boils down
Yeah, that's
to.
what it boils
There's been a
down
lot of talk lately in the industry about the value of a single-player narrative versus multiplayer games, and I still value good single-player narratives. I'm really there for a good, solid story. So thank you for continuing to support it. You talked about leveling up your bike earlier and leveling up the inventory system. Have you all shown off any of the other upgrades or upgrade systems in the game so far?
I don't think so. I think that we've actually kind of released some of the Nero boosters in some of our earlier stuff, and that's something where the player can choose to upgrade three core attributes to the player, which are essential for survival, but they also lend themselves to different play styles. So and they're the basics: health, focus, and stamina. Depending on your play style, you're going to need one a little bit more than the other. Focus allows you to slow down the space, kind of scrutinize your targets a little bit better. Stamina lets you get away from the horde, and obviously health speaks for itself. So, that's kind of the most integral, that you can feel the delta between the start of the game and the end of the game. When you're trying to outrun that horde, you need that stamina to get separation, so you can turn around and start shooting these targets without being, throwing a Molotov without the horde being right in your face. So. There's lots of things that players must upgrade. We don't require a specific one, but to survive, he's got to enhance the character and get stronger.
And that's a good example of how we're integrating exploration and puzzle solving into the world. So these things, you find these injectors only inside of Nero MMUs, which are mobile medical units. And they're scattered throughout the world. I think there's a dozen or so of them. And you have to find them. So you see the first one in some footage we released last month, but then you have to go out into the world, find these others, and getting inside each one of them presents a different puzzle. So if you want that, and not all players do, but if you want to upgrade Deacon stats, then you have to seek these things out in order to do it.
Is there a visual component that ties into those upgrades for both Deacon and the bike? Because that's one thing I love about single-player experiences, is not only feeling mechanically like I'm a more powerful character as the game progresses, but also seeing that on my character, seeing my bike look cooler and getting
definitely on the bike.
Yeah,
definitely on the bike. But on Deacon, not so much. You can see it definitely in some of the HUD elements. But Deacon's appearance is locked to the story. I mean, he looks a specific way. He wears the cut. That's obviously very important to him early on in the story. And how he changes over the course of the experience is literally tied to the story. So we really haven't allowed the player to alter that.
Gotcha. So it seems like there's different ways to approach combat. You talked a little while ago about when you're dealing with the horde, about keeping that separation. So there's kind of like a run and gun aspect to that, where it's a moving battle. But then sometimes when there's only a couple freakers around, you can really engage them a lot more.
You can engage the horde differently as well. We call this strategic sandbox combat, and what it means is every situation has multiple approaches the players can take. And with the horde, you can just start shooting right away if you feel powerful enough. And what that demands of the players to be agile and think on their feet a lot more when they're running through the environment, kind of scanning it for hey, there's this thing over there. I could probably shoot that, get past it, turn around, and shoot it. I could probably slip through this crack in the storage container, get away, get some extra separation. You could go through ahead of time and plant charges, airbag bombs and remote detonators on these things to kind of then later bring the horde through it and let those things fire off, so you can focus on getting extra separation. But and that's just against the horde. Against humans and against freakers, there's all kinds of other strategies which involve the environment, and then also nearby enemies as well, which is probably the most fun. So if there's a horde down here and you ride your bike by, you can kind of draw their attention, have them follow you up this trail, and then you can drive them right through an enemy camp and just sit back and watch the chaos.
And at our last company meeting, we saw our head of QA take on and defeat the horde using nothing but a crossbow and
an upgraded crossbow.
An upgraded crossbow and high-level crafted bolts. So it's definitely possible. It's always going to be action, though. When you're taking on the horde, it's not really a stealth encounter.
Yeah.
It's always going to be action.
It is at a certain point. Yes, it's
like a waterfall of
just and I mean, honestly, I'm almost excited for just watching the user videos for all these different strategies, because when our QA guy told us this, I was like, oh man, the game's broke. But then he told me, no, they're the explosive upgraded bolts and this and that. I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds like exactly what we're going for. Good on you for doing that. And I'm excited to see what the world, how the world shows us this game can be played.
If anybody's gonna be able to do that, it's gonna be your head of QA.
Right.
He's gonna have figured out the way to do that.
But it's a good example of where the game's at, which is it's literally a sandbox. So we're constantly surprised by team members who are coming up with strategies, and things that we hadn't thought of. And that's kind of what we really wanted, was to create an environment and a toolbox where literally, if you can think of it and the tools are there, you probably should be able to do it.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us, guys. I think
Yeah,
the
thank you,
game's
guys.
looking like it's in a great place. Like February 22nd cannot get here fast enough.
Us too.
So really looking forward to it. Check out Days Gone coming out on the PlayStation 4 February 22nd, and we're going to throw it back over to the side